Okay, so the first quirk is the front trunk, and specifically the noise that it makes when you go to open it. Yeah, so it's a little startling, especially if you're standing outside the car. There's three ways you can access the front trunk. One is with a lever by the driver footwell here that you pull twice, kind of like you were going to open your, pop your hood in a normal car. You can also use the screen in the car and push a button to open the front trunk. And then lastly, you can use the Ford Pass app, depending on your model year. I believe the 2021 models, at least as of now, still don't support Ford Pass opening the front trunk electronically from the app. But 2022 and later, they've enabled that feature. And so that's especially when this noise is the most startling and noticeable, is when you push the button, there's a little bit of lag, and then the electronic release goes. So that's a little bit startling. So also talking about the key fob for the Mach-E, I think it looks great. You know, it's got the pony on there, pretty simple. But it's a little unfortunate there's no front trunk button on here. There's clearly a blank where there could be another button on there. And there's also no remote start on here either. Now, remote start for an electric car, you know, you don't really need to warm up anything. Ideally, that you warm up the battery to get more range, but you know, you're not going to do that just walking out to the parking lot. However, being able to start either your AC or your heat with the remote start, that would be nice. Now, you can do all that from the Ford Pass app. You can remote start from the Ford Pass app, and that's very helpful. But if you are trying to use the key, that would be a nice feature to have. Also, it's kind of a thick key fob. It's kind of bulky when you put it in your pocket. So I'm not going to fault Ford too much for this, because they are trying to get folks to embrace phone as a key, and there's a lot of options there through the Ford Pass app. But if you are using the key fob, there's a little more to be desired here. One last thing on the key fob is the range is kind of disappointing on this. It feels like you have to be definitely line of sight and probably within 100 feet or so. You know, my prior Mustang 2010 model, you know, I hadn't replaced the batteries in those key fobs in years, and it felt like the range on that was about twice as far. So I'm not sure what's up with that. Still works. I've never had a problem with the key fob itself as long as I'm nearby, but it'd be nice if you could, you know, remote start it and be 300 feet away or so, and your car is warming up for you. Again, you can still do that in the app. It's just, you know, there's a few extra steps, and it's not quite as simple as just clicking a button. Okay, this quirk happened a few months ago, so let me play you that footage. Encountered something weird here. Car is on, we're in park, and the windows won't go down. None of them. Mirrors, nothing does anything. And as things would have it, we're in the drive-thru right now, so that was kind of awkward. This door switch up here works, but none of these buttons do anything. So I'm gonna try and restart the car, and still don't work. Does this one over here work? Okay, so that works, but these don't work at all. Nor do the mirror controls. So after the car sat overnight, everything worked just fine the next day, just like normal. I haven't had any issues since. It's been a couple of months since this happened, so I think we're good. But that was definitely weird, and hopefully that doesn't happen again. One pedal drive. So another quirk with that I hadn't really thought about, and this is kind of actually pretty impressive that Ford has this working, is ABS works when you're in one pedal drive. So just to recap, one pedal drive is you're never touching the brake pedal unless you want to, and you're only using the accelerator pedal to do everything. So, you know, accelerate just like normal, but when you let off the accelerator, it's going to apply a lot more regen, and then eventually the friction breaks when you're getting close to a stop. And so, you know, if you kind of lightly press the pedal, then that's going to kind of keep you more in like a neutral state where you're not speeding up or slowing down. Well, when you let off the pedal and it starts doing regen, if the system detects any wheel slippage, it will then apply friction brakes and apply ABS. And so I thought this was pretty cool. Hadn't even considered that until I was doing some driving in this car in the snow. And I was like, oh, how is one pedal drive going to do in the snow? And so I put it in unbridled mode, which does the max regen, and let off on the accelerator, and you can hear the ABS kick in. I have a short video that captures this. I'll play it for you, and you can hear the ABS actually kick in. I don't have any video of my feet, so you have to take my word for it that I'm not actually touching the brake pedal. But yeah, the car is applying ABS in one pedal drive, with basically I'm slowing down. I don't have feet on any of the pedal, either the brake or the accelerator pedal here. So that's pretty cool. Probably more in-depth thoughts on winter driving in another video. Kind of the next quirk is the tires on this car. You know, you've probably seen in a lot of videos, you know, they're not big, fat, you know, kind of muscle car wide tires, especially when you're looking at the back of the car. You know, I think from the front and from the sides, I think the tires generally look okay sized. It's when you get around the back, the tires look a little skinny. They are 225 width on the premium model that I have here. If you step up to the GT, you'll get either 235 or 245 tires, depending on which GT model you have. And I kind of wish, you know, the standard Mach-E would come with that, and then they'd actually go even wider on the GT. You know, it's four-wheel drive, it's performance-based, you want it to handle. I think the tires work, they're fine. You know, obviously the main reason they're doing the skinnier tires is for the range, but I think it would look better and feel more proper Mustang if it did have, you know, wider tires on it. Now, I wouldn't call these tires skinny either, maybe skinny by a muscle car rear tire standard, but they're not nearly as skinny as some of the smaller Priuses you'll see, or like the BMW i3. That car comes to mind when I think of skinny tires for range. And so generally I think the tires on here look okay, but maybe just a bit skinny for a Mustang. Another one, so this one is probably pretty obvious if you've driven this car or spent much time in one, is the ground clearance on this car is actually quite low for it really being considered an SUV. And the main reason for this is the battery that's in the bottom. So the battery had to go somewhere. Putting it in the bottom throughout the car, you know, that's kind of the model Tesla came up with. And so it makes a lot of sense. But because of that, you're sitting up a little higher like you would in an SUV, but the bottom of the car is sitting lower. And so that gap in between is where the battery is. And so the ground clearance in this is not what you'd expect for an SUV. It's more like a standard car when you're talking about ground clearance. So the ground clearance on the premium select Route 1 edition Mach-E's are all about 5.7 inches. The GT is actually lower at 5.3 inches. Different tire there, probably a slightly different suspension setup. So that's pretty low. You know, just over 5 inches is not much. You know, actually the standard coupe type Mustang or convertible Mustang would be pretty close to that, probably in the high 4s, low 5-inch range. So you're probably only about an inch higher for ground clearance from a standard Mustang. Now, I like this for going around town. I wish I had more ground clearance, but I found that this actually is enough compared to a standard Mustang when you're going in and out of driveways. I haven't scraped on anything. My old Mustang, there were several driveways I would drive regularly where, you know, if you weren't careful, you would scrape, and then some it was just slightly unavoidable where that the front edge of your bumper might rub as you're going over something. So good news that the Mach-E is better in that regard, but it's not nearly as good as what you would expect for a standard SUV. You know, our Jeep Cherokee has a much higher ground clearance. It's about 7.5 inches or so, maybe slightly more. And so I'll overlay a video here of a gallon of paint, something that you can compare ground clearance maybe in your own garage or flat surface. So the gallon of paint slides under the Jeep Cherokee there, no problem. Maybe 1/2 inch to 1 inch to spare, depending on where you're at under the car. The Mach-E, it starts to slide in kind of right where the door edges are, but as soon as you try and go any further than that, that's when you're starting to run into the corner of the battery tray, and then you know, you're about 2 inches too tall for it to fit under the car. So for around town, driveways, all that kind of stuff, you're probably going to be fine. But if you're going to straddle something and drive over it, you know, an obstacle in the road, or, you know, you want to go off-road, you know, this car really isn't set up for off-road. But if you were going to do that, just kind of something to keep in mind compared to, you know, other SUVs. Also, talking about ground clearance, you know, one thing there is the door to conceal the battery and kind of have this, you know, have this nice appearance on the outside of the car. The bottom edge of the door is very low and similar to what you would have in a normal sedan. And so if you're parked next to a curb and you open the door, generally you're probably going to be okay. But if it's a tall curb, or, you know, the street's at a slant and then you're opening the door onto a slant, your door can actually run into the pavement or concrete or whatever that is, or grass. So just something to keep in mind. Again, it's not a huge deal. It's just kind of this stuff that you don't really notice it until you live with it for a little bit. All right, so one other thing to note is the wheelbase on this car. The wheelbase on this car is very long, especially for the size that this car is. We have a Jeep Cherokee, not a Grand Cherokee, but the Cherokee. It's a little bit smaller SUV, and its wheelbase is 106.6 inches. The Mach-E's wheelbase is 117 inches. That's pretty significant. That's over 10 inches longer wheelbase in a very similar sized car. The overall length of the Mach-E is 186 inches. The Jeep Cherokee is 183 inches. So the Mach-E is only 3 inches longer, yet its wheelbase is 10 inches longer. Comparing to a Grand Cherokee, so Grand Cherokee, its wheelbase is 116.7 inches. Mach-E's 117. So actually the Mach-E is still slightly longer wheelbase than a Grand Cherokee, but the Grand Cherokee is 193.5 inches long. So the Grand Cherokee is 7.5 inches longer, and the Mach-E still has a slightly longer wheelbase. So, you know, I didn't really notice this at first until I started parking next to other cars, looking at their length, looking where my wheels were. So that was pretty interesting. You know, I think that really helps the Mach-E feel really planted on the highway. You know, if it's windy out, plus you've got all the weight in this car with the batteries down low, so that helps a lot too. But feels very planted when you're cruising on the highway. Okay, a lot of reviewers will talk about the doors on this car and how that operates. So you may have seen that already. Kind of the quirks I want to mention here are more just it's interesting how Ford approached this. They decided, you know, hey, we want to remove the door handles to help give the car a more futuristic look, and also to help with the range and just overall wind resistance. And so they really had to engineer quite a bit to get this to work. There's a mechanism in the door called the door presenter. And this presenter is a mechanical kind of solenoid looking piece that when you push the button on the outside of the car, it will unlock and pop the door for you open about an inch or two. And so this will then make it a lot easier to grab the door and open it all the way, especially in the back where there's no kind of fake handle. The front doors have this little handle. It's not a latch, but it is a little grab handle where you can open the door. So the other unique thing about this presenter is once it's extended, but you haven't opened the door yet, the presenter is still touching the door. And so if you push on the door, you can't close the door. And the idea here is, so if you put your fingers behind there and accidentally bump it, or somebody bumps you from behind or whatever, you don't smash your fingers on the door. So love that. I think that's great. Nobody wants to smash their fingers in the door. So that's pretty cool. But there's a lot of other mechanisms here just to open your door. So it's kind of interesting how they approach this. Once you actually go to open the door all the way, you'll hear the presenter retract and you don't really even notice it's there. If you blocked out the sound, you wouldn't really even know that's, something's happening. One other interesting thing is a software update several months ago, maybe longer than that. When you unlatch the door from the inside, the presenter used to open your door for you slightly, just like it did when you were outside the car. But they've actually changed that to where when you open the door, the presenter doesn't actuate. There's just the little electronic release so your door can open, but the presenter is not working at all right now since you don't really need it. You're going to apply force to open the door. So kind of interesting, that'll save some cycles on your presenter from wearing out, hopefully. So interesting they updated that with the software update. Also on the doors and unlatching them, so on the outside of the car, and I didn't realize this until probably after I owned the car for about a month or so, is there's the main button that's real obvious that you push to open the door and the presenter actuates and all that. And that's how you open the door. But right above that, there's a little lock symbol. And I always thought, oh, it's just the symbol to indicate, yeah, this is the button I push to unlock the car. But no, it's actually a lock symbol. And so there's a capacitive touch right above the actual circular button. So you can touch the lock and it'll lock the car. So that's helpful. But sometimes it ends up being a little counterproductive, because if you slightly miss the actual button, maybe your hands are full or you're not paying attention and you're just trying to press the button to open the door, you might accidentally press around the button, which then actually locks the car. So when you do press the button correctly, then it has to unlock and then the presenter can fire, and it just adds some additional time just to open your door. So I like that they added the lock option. It's nice to like push something and then walk away from the car. The car does support, walk away lock. You can lock it from your phone. You can, lock it from the key fob. But it's nice just to, my hand's already right here at the door. I'm just going to lock it and then move on, to my next thing. And so it's nice that it's there, but I kind of wish it was also a physical button somehow, so that you weren't accidentally pressing lock when you're actually trying to press unlock. Last thing on the doors is the, when I first got the car, I was on software in the version 2 range. We're in version 4 now, about 8 months later. And so the consistency of unlocking the doors from the button was not very good. Sometimes you have to press the button 2 or 3 times for the car to recognize that you're there and you're actually trying to unlock the door. And so that kind of got frustrating, kind of going back to this whole, it feels a little over-engineered, fixing a problem that not really sure it was a problem. I totally get the range and kind of a futuristic look for the style, but sometimes the simpler things are better. But anyways, the consistency of it unlocking or locking with the capacitive touch was not very good. And so that was kind of another reason why I carried the key fob and kind of still do carry it fairly regularly, is I wanted to unlock it or lock it. And the key fob was pretty reliable for that, especially when you're right next to the car. Very reliable. So, and now in version 3, it seemed like this got a little bit better. And now in the version 4 software, I would say, I think I've only had one instance where I had to press the button twice, and that's after using it every day for the past several weeks. So that's quite a few cycles, and it's unlocked every time. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the front trunk, but how about the rear trunk? So the rear trunk is generally great. The quirk I wanted to mention is the power close. So when you press the button, it starts closing immediately. There's no delay to get out of the way or anything. So if you're triggering it from the key fob, that's probably fine. You've probably already stepped away from the car, but there's a button on the actual hatch itself that you can push, and it'll close. And so I really think they should add a software update or something so you can have a 2-3 second of delay, so you could push the button, maybe grab your stuff, get out of the way, and then it's closing. The Jeep Cherokee we have does this. There's a delay, and that's much appreciated. Okay, so here's one that I didn't know until I lived with the car actually for a while. The front camera has a windshield washer spray to help clean the lens. And this is the camera that's right below the hood. There's also a camera up here behind the rear view mirror, but this is the camera that's in the very front of the car. And there's a little spray nozzle that'll come out and squirt the camera lens with fluid. So that's pretty cool. Helps with I'm sure with the Blue Cruise system and pre-collision warning and all that kind of stuff. So it makes sense that it's there, but I was a little confused because I had recently cleaned the car or whatever, and then some time went by, and I used my windshield washer sprayer and the wipers went and the whole thing. And then later I had pulled into the garage and I was just looking at the front of the car, and there was some like blue, what looked like washer fluid on the front of the car. I'm like, how did that get up there? I did this while I was on the freeway, so it should all have blown back and it wouldn't have ended up there. So anyway, that was kind of neat to find that one out. Another big one, if you're even a little bit familiar with the Mach-E, you've probably seen this, is the front shutters that open and close for the Radiator that's up there. These will open under a variety of conditions, but primarily it's when there's ever going to be some kind of cooling running. I have not seen these open when you're running the heat, only when you're running some kind of cooling, either to cool down the battery or to use the air conditioning. So these shutters open when you're doing DC fast charging, especially in the summer, and when you're running the AC, usually in the summer. So in the wintertime, these shutters are closed most of the time, and that's going to help with kind of airflow up front there and should improve the range. It'd be interesting to know exactly how much those shutters help by being closed, how much additional range that buys you, but I'm sure it's enough that it was worth it for them to install that capability. Okay, last one for this video, charging. So I have a whole video on charging. I'll link that below if you haven't seen that one. I'll probably be making some more charging videos actually, because it seems like that's what a lot of folks are interested about for this car. But if you do DC fast charging, this is going to be, your Electrify America especially, or even like ChargePoint doing a 50 kilowatt kind of thing. The cables for those are just massively heavy and stiff and kind of awkward. And they also, I feel like, put a lot of strain on the charge port of the car. The charge port is mostly plastic housing and everything, which is fine. But it feels like when you go to plug that in, especially when it's cold out, you've got this big, heavy, stiff cable that, doesn't exactly want to go where you want it to. Eventually you get it there. But then when you let it go, I generally try and do this kind of carefully so I don't just let it go and let all this weight kind of, yank on that connector. Just reading some forums before I bought this car, somebody had a couple of issues with their charge port connector eventually going bad and had to be replaced. And when I was doing DC fast charging, it just made me wonder, is that a potential kind of cause of failure there, is if you're not extra careful with the cables and your DC fast charging, several times a week or something like that, that's going to put a lot of extra strain on the port. So just something to keep in mind. I'm sure the engineers at the Ford team thought about that. I'm sure there's a lot of reinforcements to help with those heavy cables there. But just kind of interesting. And along the same lines, just to note, when you do DC fast charge, there's a little electronic latch that clamps down on the cable so that you can't just pull it out if charging is in progress. So that would be probably a very dangerous and rather large spark if you pulled those apart while, you know, electricity was flowing. When you're doing just normal charging, either level 2 or level 1 at home or out and about, all you need to do is just press on the little release and pull it out. You know, it's a lot lower voltage and amperage there. Lastly, just with electric cars and charging and stuff in general, boy, it just makes me wonder about all those electric contacts. You know, should you be cleaning your contacts, you know, with some kind of contact cleaner or something? I have not done anything like that for mine. I'll have to dig through the owner's manual to see if it talks about that. But, I mean, if you think about these connectors, especially the public ones, you know, they're getting a lot of use. There's going to be, you know, exposed to some elements there. Could have a little bit of rust build up in there if it got wet or something like that. And so it just makes me wonder over time, you know, is that going to be kind of one of those services you should be doing, is in addition to rotating the tires, cleaning out your charge port. All right, well, that covers all the quirks, at least the big ones that I wanted to highlight that I've run into so far with this car. If there's other ones you've heard about or that you've experienced and you're curious about my thoughts on them, leave that in the comments below and maybe I'll make another video. So thanks again for joining and watching this video. Appreciate the support, and we'll catch you next time. See you later.